Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I've done this once before, and that is a bunch of movies that I missed reviewing throughout the year. Last time I did 10 movies, this time I'm going to do 15 movies that I never ended up reviewing, some of which I liked, some of which I didn't, which we'll get into in a second here. But I'm going to be talking about 15 movies, and it's kind of weird. In a year where people think that absolutely no movies came out, I actually watched I think 66 or 67 movies this year, which is a little bit under my average, which my average is around like 70 to 75 a year. And I was trying to get 100 this year, as I say every single year, to watch 100 new movies, and that never happens for various reasons. But this year I still hit 66 or 67, so I'm very happy with that. And I reviewed a bunch of movies, and so today I'm going to pile on bunch of extra reviews, none of which are going to be in my top 15 of the year. So if some are omitted, that is the reason. And so of course tomorrow is New Year's Eve, so that is when I will be posting my 15 best movies of the year, another 15 list, because I watched a lot and I enjoyed a lot, so that's going to be coming tomorrow. But for now, let's just jump right into 15 movies I missed, and I'm going to do brief little tiny mini reviews for them. So buckle up and let's just get started. All right, first up is The Lodge, which is actually a runner-up for my best movies of the year list. This one didn't quite reach there for me because I don't know, there's some aspects of it that I wasn't exactly completely on board for, and it has been a while since I've seen it, so I'm not remembering everything exactly how it was, but I really enjoyed the contained feel and the twists and turns that this movie had, it being a more horror thriller aspect of it, and the performances were all good, and the main actress being stuck in this house with these two kids and what it meant and what this possible purgatory that they were in, all that aspect of the mystery behind what's really going on in this house in this lodge was very, very fascinating. And in the end, I absolutely loved it. It didn't quite reach my list, unfortunately, for tomorrow, but it is one that you guys should definitely check out. I believe it's on one of the streaming services, maybe Netflix, maybe Hulu, I'm not exactly sure which one. Next up is The Call of the Wild with Harrison Ford and a CGI dog, which this movie failed for me very, very much. I don't really enjoy dog movies too much. All the ones where the dog's purpose, those movies, I absolutely can't stand them. I refuse to watch them, and I love dogs. I'm a huge dog person, but when it came to this movie, the only reason why I saw it is because after work one day, since I worked at a theater, I just decided, hey, we got off early, let's just pop on a movie and watch it, and we chose Call of the Wild, and man, it was not that great at all. It wasn't terrible. It's not the worst thing you'll ever see. If you have kids, they might enjoy it, but I watched them with my sisters, and they really didn't enjoy it either, and it's a CGI dog. It's hard to connect to it. It has these human emotions that just don't work for a dog, and you can train a dog to do these things, as we saw in Togo, which I believe was last year, and Togo is a great film, so why couldn't they do anything even close to that in this movie? It just didn't work for me on any level. Harrison Ford is great as always, acting against absolutely nothing. So, I mean, he's great in it, but besides that, this movie just didn't have much to offer. Next up is a weird one, guys. This movie was just added to Netflix recently, but when I first watched it, I believe I actually rented it, but I didn't do a review for it. It is Yes, God, Yes, with Natalie Dyer from Stranger Things, and this movie is a weird one. It's basically about a super religious Catholic girl who discovers, masturbation and porn for the first time, and my God, this movie is really, really funny. It's so lighthearted and enjoyable, and just it's a really fun movie, and one that is very unexpected when you watch it. And it has different elements that you wouldn't expect to be in a movie, or I guess the plot is completely unexpected to be in a movie in general, and it just doesn't treat any subjects as taboo. And from taking the perspective of somebody who's growing up as a Catholic, it was very fascinating to watch, and I absolutely love this movie. This was another contender for best movie, or for my best movies of the year list, and it didn't quite get there, but her performance is incredible, and just the entire story is whack and is really, really funny. Next up is one that I didn't include on my best movies of the year list because it's a movie. It's 57 minutes long for the runtime, and it is called Host. It's on Shudder. This was made completely during the quarantine, so it's a Zoom movie. And yes, guys, you hear me say Zoom movie, and you probably are clicking away immediately, like, why in the world would I watch this thing? But if you have not heard about it, it is really, really great. All the things that they can do just with this concept on Zoom, which has been done before in movies like Unfriended and in Searching, which Searching worked really well. And although I don't think this is quite as good as Searching, the fact that they did all of this legitimately through Zoom and through FaceTime type of technologies, it's really impressive. And as a filmmaker myself, trying to make films throughout the quarantine, that one was very, very impressive. Next up was one of the first HBO Max originals that I ever watched before Wonder Woman came out on HBO Max. This is Seth Rogen's An American Pickle, I believe is what it's called. And this movie was a huge disappointment. I was really excited from when I saw the trailer of basically Seth Rogen as like an old 1800s, I guess, pickle maker, falls in a vat of pickle juice and gets kind of preserved over several centuries, and then he wakes up and finds his great great grandson, who is also played by Seth Rogen, and they kind of form a bond, and that's what you get from the trailer. But this movie gets extremely political, and it escalates very very quickly, and it just was not my type of thing. It was so on the nose and overbearing. The setup in the beginning, the first half of the movie, worked really well for me. It was very funny, but then it just kind of it spiraled out of control, and it basically became a war between great great grandfather and great great grandson, and that's not what I was expecting from the movie at all. And it got really, really self-serious towards the end of it and being extremely political, and that's not what I was wanting going into that movie. And you might go into that knowing that it gets political and all these things and enjoy it because of that, but the fact that I was so unexpectedly just hit in the face by its message was very off-putting for me, unfortunately. Next up is a Netflix original, which I was also extremely excited for. It stars Jamie Foxx. It is called Project Power, also starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt and a great cast of young actors who I'd never seen in anything else before. And I'll say this, the cast did a great job. The actress in this movie that I'm not sure if she was in anything else, but she was fantastic in this film. And basically the premise is there's these pills going around where if you take it, you get 5 minutes of superpowers, and you don't really know your power until you take this pill. But once you know your power, you're going to have that consistently every time you take this essentially drug. And with that concept, this movie could have been so much more than it was, but unfortunately it ended up being extremely just simple and basic plot-wise, and it didn't really do anything great with that incredible concept that it had, and that's where it became disappointing. I don't think the movie itself is bad. It's a very fine movie. It's very okay. Again, like I said, the performances are great, but it just, by the end of it, it was not really memorable. I forgot the majority of this movie after watching it. I'm struggling to remember certain aspects of the movie besides me walking out of it being very just kind of whelmed. Not underwhelmed, not overwhelmed, just extremely whelmed. Next up is another one that almost made my best movies of the year list, which is Enola Holmes on Netflix with Millie Bobby Brown, also from Stranger Things. And this movie was a blast. It was so much fun. It had one of the writers from Fleabag, and I love that show and the breaking of the fourth wall. And that's what they do in this movie with Millie Bobby Brown. And her performance as Enola Holmes was very, very charming, and just such a great adventure to follow on. This movie actually came into a lot of legal battles, which I'm not sure if it actually was able to get out of it. I believe the court cases are done. When I watched that movie, I was like, I really want to see a sequel with this movie with more Henry Cavill and more Millie Bobby Brown and that relationship between Sherlock Holmes and Enola Holmes. And there's so much that they could have done with this concept. Where this movie kind of failed was it started off as a mystery of trying to find her mother, but then it kind of became about something completely different. Again, it got a little political with the situations that are going on around in this time period where women can't vote, and all that stuff was very interesting. But the entire setup, the first like 30 minutes, was about finding the mother, and I almost completely forgot about that until the very ending of the film, which was a little disappointing to me because I thought it set up a very intriguing mystery, but then it kind of completely ignored that to look towards a different mystery. Next up is The Trial of the Chicago 7, which this movie was very highly anticipated by a lot of people. It's written by Aaron Sorkin, I believe directed by Aaron Sorkin, and you know his dialogue is super snappy, back and forth, very entertaining like in The Social Network, and this movie was very good. I'll say that, but it just wasn't as great as I was hoping it'd be. And this movie had a lot of praise when I first heard the initial reviews, but I really was kind of underwhelmed by it because I wanted to focus more on Yahya Abdul-Mateen II's role in this film, and they really just kind of ignored his character. And then when I read up more about the true story behind this, his story was probably the most interesting out of everybody. And although Sacha Baron Cohen is fantastic in the film and his performance is really riveting to watch, along with the entire cast of characters, the movie just kind of ignored that one aspect. And when I kind of learned the true story and the actual events of this entire court case of the Chicago 7, I was actually kind of disappointed with the direction that this movie went in. Although this movie is extremely well made, extremely well directed, the pacing is incredible, and the acting is top notch, it just, I couldn't help but walking out of it feeling a little lied to by the true story. It just didn't do that story justice. Unlike Mangrove, which will actually be on my top 15 of the year list tomorrow, which that movie had some similarities in terms of like, you know, it's another social justice type of court case movie, and that movie does it extremely well, and I couldn't have one. I had to have one or the other, and Mangrove was definitely the better film between the two. Alright, next up is a weird one that I actually was able to see in theaters. This one's called Kajillionaire with Evan Rachel Wood, and this is a really bizarre one. So this movie basically follows this very eccentric family, with Evan Rachel Wood being the daughter of these two heist people. They pull off these really small scale heists that they think is so grand, and they're getting so much out of it, but really, they're living in a little shop corner with pink ooze oozing out of the wall, and they have nothing to them, and they meet Gina Rodriguez's character, who kind of elevates them to a higher level of heistery, and this relationship forms between those two. And this movie was very, very bizarre. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm not sure if it's streaming anywhere, but if you guys ever see Kajillionaire on TV, it's actually kind of worth watching. I thought it was very weird and bizarre, very unique, very well directed. I thought the performances were all really, really solid from everybody involved, especially the two parents. But I don't know. I just walked out of this movie feeling very just weird. I'm not sure. I've never seen a movie like this, so it's very unique in that way. And I guess I would recommend it to you guys, but again, such a weird movie. On the Rocks is a Sofia Coppola movie with Bill Murray and Rashida Jones, and this movie was very close. This was the last movie that I knocked off of my top 15 list, so this would be number 16. I absolutely loved this film, and it really hurts me for it to not be on my top 15 of the year list. Definitely go check this one out, guys. It's on Apple TV Plus, and essentially what it's about is it's about Rashida Jones, who's kind of rekindling her relationship with her father, played by Bill Murray, and they kind of go on this adventure together of trying to figure out whether or not her husband has had an affair. And so it's a very, very funny, very bizarre movie of just watching these two people kind of plan their way around, like they're trying to solve a mystery. They built this mystery in their minds, and they're trying to solve it. And this relationship between father and daughter is very, very fun to watch, and it's very, very funny. Sofia Coppola does a great job directing this thing, and honestly, I really enjoyed this movie so much that, like I said, it pained me to not put this in my best movies of the year list. I highly, highly recommend you guys to watch this movie, mainly because Bill Murray is just always so fun to watch on screen. He is so great in this movie. Clouds was from the director of 5 Feet Apart, which, if you guys watch my review of that, I actually do have a review of 5 Feet Apart. I really, really enjoyed that movie, but the ending was so incredibly garbage that I ended up hating it by the end of it. That movie was so great. I was really enjoying it. I was so on board until the ending. It just really fell flat for me. But this movie, on the other hand, is fairly consistent throughout. I really liked the ending of this movie. It was very, very touching and heartbreaking. It's based on a true story, and it just was it was so much better than 5 Feet Apart. I guess the first 2 acts was not as good as the first 2 acts in 5 Feet Apart, but the ending was much better than that of 5 Feet Apart. I'd probably put them on par with each other, of being equally as good as each other. I'm not sure if it's like, it's not like an amazingly great movie, but it tugged at my heartstrings, and it did very well. And it's on Disney Plus, so it's a harmless watch if you guys have Disney Plus, and it's very, very entertaining. And the true story was fascinating. I want to know more about it. I believe there's a documentary episode on this one show about this kid, and it was just a really touching story, so definitely go check out Clouds if you guys have a chance. Borat Subsequent Movie Film is the next one on this list, and this movie, although not quite as funny as the original one, which that one held up extremely well. I watched it for the first time right before watching this new one. This new one was really funny. It wasn't quite as funny as the original one, but I don't think it'll hold up as well as the original one did in future years upcoming, and I enjoyed it for the time that it came out. I thought it came out at the perfect time, right before the election, but it wasn't enough for me to make a video about it. I didn't do a review for it because I just didn't really want to talk about that subject matter at the time that it was coming out, but it has some very funny moments, and the Rudy Giuliani thing towards the end of it is just, my God, how in the world did they pull that stunt off? It's very entertaining for what it was, and I enjoyed it for the most part. His House was a Netflix horror movie with 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, and this one unfortunately does not make my top movies of the year list because I honestly fell asleep like 5 times throughout this movie, and I don't think it's to the fault of the movie. I think the movie is very slow building, and it kind of gradually increases in terms of the running time of the movie. Like, as you go through the movie, things get more and more intense. But I was very tired that day, and it took me like 3 days to watch it because every single day that I started it, I just couldn't stop falling asleep, and I feel like I haven't even seen the movie. From what I did see, from what I remember, it was very good. The movie had me very, very like riled in at so many points in the film, but I just couldn't help myself but fall asleep. I'm not sure if it was the movie or if it was just me, but that's just kept on happening, and it's just kind of an unfortunate consequence of me watching that on a very tired day. But people love this movie, so maybe it's worth checking out. I'm definitely going to try to watch it again, and maybe on second watch I'll love it a lot more. The second to last movie that I'm talking about in this video is going to be Mank, which is the new David Fincher movie starring Gary Oldman. and this movie was great. I really, really enjoyed this movie. Again, another runner-up to my best movies of the year list. This one wasn't quite as good. Honestly, the best part of this movie was getting me to watch Citizen Kane. I really was not expecting to absolutely adore Citizen Kane, considering that everybody always told me that it's one of the greatest movies of all time. And usually when a movie is that hyped and that praised, when you watch it, you're kind of underwhelmed. But for me, at least, I was completely caught up in that film, and I'm so glad that Mank finally got me to watch Citizen Kane for the first time. But with Mank, I think there are so many flashback sequences that I just didn't care about whatsoever. All the stuff with Amanda Seyfried was great in the flashback sequences. All of that I loved and I was so focused in. But there's so much other stuff in these flashback scenes that I just didn't care about whatsoever. And the modern day story of him actually writing the film, that stuff kept me very much wrapped into the story, but some of these flashbacks just really bored me, which is very unfortunate because I love David Fincher, and I think this is a very, very well made and very well directed and very well acted movie, and it's probably going to get a bunch of awards, but it wasn't quite good enough to make it on my personal list of favorite movies of 2020. And last but not least was probably my favorite Christmas movie I watched this year. I watched almost 20 Christmas movies this year, which last year I watched maybe one, and this one and Klaus are just very, very wonderful. I really enjoyed watching both of those movies this year before Christmas, and Happy Season was a great movie. And honestly, I know the Christmas season is over, but people are still kind of in the holiday cheer mood for the next couple of days, so maybe pop on Happy Season and watch that because it's a very, very good film. The performances are all great. I love the romance and the relationship in this movie, and the entire storyline of a kind of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner meets just a really fun modern twist on it, and it's a very fun, entertaining movie, very funny, and just I had a blast with it. So there it is, everybody. That was my very long list of movies that I miss reviewing. There's very brief reviews for all of them. If you have any suggestions down below of movies that was not on this list or movies that I have not reviewed yet, also check out my video tomorrow of the best movies of the year list, because that one might have some of the movies that I had missing on this list and some movies that I have not reviewed yet, like The Sound of Metal, like Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, and some of those movies that just kind of flew under the radar of super indie films, because my list tomorrow is filled with independent movies that just people might not have seen. And if you guys have not seen any of the movies that I mentioned here on today's list, comment down below and let me know what you guys think of that as well. So thanks guys for watching this video, and subscribe to the channel to see tomorrow's video and all the reviews that I've done in the past and in the future. So thanks guys for watching. I'm excited for 2021, and 2020 was a terrible year, but there were some great movies in there, so I cannot wait to talk about those in the next video. So thanks guys for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.